Hello everyone, thank you for your presence. It is our pleasure to have in Tirana today the High Representative of the European Union and Vice President of the European Commission,
Josep Borrell,
with whom we discussed, obviously, on the great concern resulting from the aggression in Ukraine and all its consequences that have spilled over in Europe and beyond, initially in the form of skyrocketing prices. We also discussed clearly about the role of Albania in the UN Security Council and Albania's position being aligned with the European Union vis-à-vis Russia and the Russian aggression against Ukraine. However, certainly part of the discussion was also a further advancement in the process of Albania's integration into the European Union. Specifically concerning the formal opening of accession negotiations, which I believe Mr. Borrell will talk about himself. As far as I'm concerned, I have repeated time after time what is universally known, that Albania has chosen this as its natural standing. Not because somebody has asked that of us in Brussels, in Berlin, in Paris, or in Washington for that matter. We are proud members of a great alliance that is NATO, and we are likewise proud Europeans, proud of being European and Albanians who look towards Europe and see there the doors to our future. For this range of reasons, we have this position today, and it is a standing that is imposed by our children. Fight the war in Ukraine is the demarcation line between the world we know very well, that is the world of lacking human rights and freedoms, a world of isolation and of pains imposed by an authoritarian regime, and or as distinct to the world we have today, that of course can be better than it is, but it is incomparably better than the world we used to have. And the fate of the world we have is being played now in Ukraine. Our position is not a principled position vis-à-vis another people and country, but it is a vital, existential position vis-à-vis our children and this homeland we have inherited from our ancestors, and we are only passers-by. We spoke about the opening of the accession negotiations. I stand by what I have said several times, that this is an issue up to the European Union, it is up to the European Commission. The European Commission has stated that Albania has to sit around the table to start the accession negotiations, but the European Council has not managed to do it due to a recent block of Northern Macedonia by Bulgaria. This is not something we have done. We are quite ready to sit immediately around the table when the green light is given, but we are not going to lose a second of our sleep waiting for this to happen, because we will continue to work the same as if accession negotiations were open already. So it is up to the European Commission, to the European Council. The sooner they do it, the more will it be honorable to them, because time is going by and they are not delivering on promises. But we understand that this is no longer an issue of the common will of the European Council, because all countries seem to be quite ready to open these negotiations, but it is a question of an impasse between two other countries, that is Northern Macedonia and Bulgaria. The French presidency can do this in June. It would be great if it happened, but even if it does not, we are here waiting for it to happen. But we are not going to wait for a second when it comes to the work that we have to do, that we should do and we will do, that bring us closer with the European standards here in Albania. Last, I spoke to the High Representative of the European Union, both on the fact that if the European Union has a plan to support the countries, be it for addressing the energy crisis, that as we spoke is the worst part of a crisis, as well as when it comes to addressing other war consequences, they do not leave out the Western Balkans as they did when establishing the first scheme of vaccine distribution. On the other hand, they possibly accelerate the Corridor 8 project that is part of the economic institutions. It grows even, or let's say, to become increasingly strategic, being a security corridor. So the topics were more or less what I mentioned. I wish to thank our friend, because indeed he is another friend of our country and of our region, since due to his office he's closer to the region and to the country, and he is an advocate who frankly deserves all our respect for what he does in order to speed up these processes that clearly need the right voices and the right people. And I'm going to give the floor now to one of the right voices and one of the right persons who work for Albania in Brussels.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I am really happy to be in Tirana today with you and your government. Albania is my second stop in my trip to the Western Balkans. And let me start by thanking Prime Minister Edi Rama, with whom I had interesting and good discussions. And I am also looking forward to have the opportunity to meet with the Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Interior, and Deputy Minister of Defense later today. And also with the civil society to have exchanges with representatives of the people, the civil society of this country who play such an important role for the country's democracy and country vibrant society. Everybody knows, and the Prime Minister has been repeating, and I agree with him, that there is a critical moment for us, for the Europeans, in the broader sense of the world, which certainly includes the Western Balkans and certainly Albania. It's a critical moment, and it's more needed than ever to meet and to discuss with one of our closest allies and partners. That's awful, but everybody is watching through the TV channels how the Russian leadership continues to indiscriminately attacking Ukraine and its citizens. It's not just a war on the military sense of the word. It's an attack against the population of Ukraine, its cities, civilians, including women, children, schools, and hospitals. The Russian armed forces are causing death, desperation, and massive damage. Everybody can witness that through their TV at home. They can also watch the brave resistance of the Ukrainians, the Ukrainian people, that continue supporting their armed forces, defending their country. And we are continuing our vast support to Ukraine, to the Ukrainian people. It will continue. In spite of the Russians' attacks and threats, this support will continue. It has been a brutal aggression from Russia to its neighbor. And in response to this brutal aggression against Ukraine and its people, we have adopted today, Prime Minister, I was talking about that with you, a new and fourth package of restrictive measures, what we call colloquially sanctions, to further contribute to ramping up our economic pressure on the Kremlin and cripple its logistical basis and its ability to finance the invasion of Ukraine. The measures that we are taking will affect Russia's trade, market access, membership in international financial organizations, crypto assets, exports of goods, and targeting critical economic sectors of the economy as steel and energy. And we are listing still more individuals. There's already more than 800 and more companies that are playing an active role in supporting the people, the clique around Putin, who are undermining Ukraine's sovereignty from the Russian government. This is another major blow to the economic and logistic basis upon which Putin is building the invasion and taking the resources to finance it. Useless to repeat, because we have said that many times, that this aggression is a mass violation of international law and principles and a threat for the security and stability in Europe. I know that today Albania is appearing as a most reliable partner of the European Union and globally. Albania was already aligned 100% with the European Union common security and foreign policy before the war. And on these testing times, Albania has reconfirmed its engagement and commitment to the international security. I want more particularly to thank Albania for its work globally in the international arena as a member of the United Nations Security Council. Albania was a pen holder of the United Nations Security Council resolution and co-sponsored the United Nations General Assembly resolution against Russia and aggression that resulted with a strong condemnation and isolation of Russia in the international community. Albania is a member of NATO, the NATO ally, but beyond that, it's also a security provider. I am very much grateful to Albania for their contribution to our CSDP missions, our military missions around the world. And it's an important contribution that was taking place much before the war, and I hope it will continue and increase. We will also continue and increase our cooperation on cybersecurity to fight against disinformation, very much needed. And I am proposing to allocate resources to enhance security and defense on the region. We are living a moment in which stability and unity is more important than ever. And it is high time to reinvigorate the enlargement process. I know that you have heard that several times before. And you, especially Prime Minister, has been saying once and again that you don't need more declarations, but more actions. And that's true. But it's also true that it's high time to reinvigorate this process and integrate the Western Balkans in an irreversible manner into the European Union. Albania met all the conditions for opening the accession negotiations, and I strongly support, work, engage, contribute to the start of the accessions during the French presidency. It's not an undetermined date, but it's a time horizon. And what I'm saying for Albania should be also true for North Macedonia. Believe me, Prime Minister, we are engaged more than ever. My fellow colleague, the Commissioner Oliver, in charge of the accession process, is devoting all its efforts to that. Me too, from the broader prospects of the regional stability and foreign policy. All institutions have taken clear understanding of the importance that today more than ever represents the unity with the Europeans and the integration of the Western Balkans. So this has to be fulfilled in a time horizon as much concrete as the time of the French presidency. Certainly, I cannot make something that engages me personally, because it's not up to me, but up to the European institutions as a whole. But we are working as much as we can in order to overcome the latest difficulty for that becoming a reality. And I have also to praise you, Prime Minister, for the speed on your reforms, especially on the field of justice reform, to support the rule of law. They have been very much significant and need to continue, because with these reforms, supporting green economy, supporting digital transformation will ensure a rapid advancement when negotiations are launched. And let's go, if you allow me, to something closer to the everyday life of citizens. I know that you have been facing strong concerns in the mind of the people about growing prices. It's not just in Albania. The war has created in the world economy. It's not the consequences of being aligned with the sanctions. Many states which has not aligned with the sanctions at all are suffering exactly the same process of price increase. A price increase in electricity, in oil, in gas, also in food, which is the consequence of the dependency of all of us from a world economy integrated, of a mutual interdependency that now is becoming a weapon because Russia is using it as a weapon. And it's not a matter just of Albania or consequences of the sanctions. It's consequences of the war, consequences of the stop of exports, consequences of the price increase in products, which affect all of us here in Europe, in the Western Balkans, in North Africa, in Sahel, everywhere. Allow me to put an example. I was paying my electricity bill at home in Spain at 50 euros megawatt hour, and now it's about 500 euros megawatt hour. And this is something that happens in the whole Europe. The electricity prices has been increasing by at least 6 times. The oil for my car in Brussels, it's at more than 2 euros liter, 20% increase. I can say the same thing about food, and I'm sorry to say it's going to be a phenomenon that will affect poor countries in the world much more than us, because they are very much dependent of the wheat being produced in Russia, who has stopped the exports, and it will create a wave shock in the world economy. And the only way of facing that is becoming united and putting in place a strategy that allow us to support each other. And I take good note that your request of any answer to this economic crisis should include the Western Balkans, because we are facing a third asymmetric shock in the European economy. First was the euro crisis in 2008, asymmetric. It affected the countries in the south. The second was the pandemic, asymmetric. It was affecting more one country than others. And this is also asymmetric, because look at the eastern borders of Europe. Poland has been today receiving as many refugees, that it has become the country in Europe with the highest proportion of foreign people in a couple of weeks. Things has changed quickly. We have been hosting in the European Union member states more than 2 million people. And Putin's purpose is to destroy Ukraine and to empty Ukraine, pushing their people to escape. So 2.5 million today, how many tomorrow? Or the day after tomorrow? If the bombing continues, if the population starves, you can live for a while without heating, but not so long without water. And that's what's happening in Mariupol, in many cities in Ukraine. The Russian army is unable to conquer, so they stop, they encircle, and they do what they know to do very well: bombing, destroying. They did that in Syria. Remember the pictures of Aleppo. They did that in Chechnya. Remember Grozny. And they are doing the same thing in Ukraine. This is going to be the biggest humanitarian crisis that the Secretary General of the United Nations said yesterday. So on this occasion, we have to do 3 things: to isolate Russia from the international community, to put the heavy cost of our economic sanctions on it, and support Ukrainian people. And support the people that are supporting us on this endeavor. And Albania is one of them, one of the most important people, clearly determined to have a strong stance defending international law, territorial integrity, and human rights. And finally, Prime Minister, to talk about the investment plan that has mobilized and will continue mobilizing unprecedented resources to support diversification of energy supply, reducing dependencies, strengthening regional cooperation, building infrastructures, creating jobs. And I take good note of your will that these specific infrastructures that can help a lot to delock Albania and integrate in this physical space of the region will be taken the attention that you have been asking for, and I'm sure it will have. It is this kind of initiative that can address the economic development of the region, to face the consequences of the war, to face future shocks, and allow also to focus on the economic recovery, who can be very much affected by these unhappy events. This is also the moment to show solidarity by all means, from energy saving to resource sharing. And I am very happy to be here with you, Prime Minister, and to share these thoughts, which will guide our actions. Thank you.
Gracias.
Një pyetje për zotin Bareli. Ishte emocionuese ajo çfarë
It was
tregoi.
quite emotional. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. It was so emotional to see Brussels' readiness to, let's say, welcome and to support Ukraine when the attack started. Will Brussels wait for a war to knock on the doors of the Balkans so that in addition of expressing the willingness for a concrete date for the IGC is followed by actions? Will you only stick to words, or are you going to actually have an expressed will and actions? You touched upon this, but I had to ask again. Of course, the crisis of the prices is one that has not only affected Albania, but also Brussels, as you said, and other world capitals. But it is rather specific in Albania, since the level of the salaries is not the same as in the European capitals. Will you take into account the request of the Prime Minister for financial support to tackle such crisis? Thank you.
Well, if you allow me, the question is a little bit artificial. Just to say that someone has to be invaded in order to become a candidate, it's a simplification of a complex and sad reality. We reacted immediately against an invasion, something that doesn't happen every day, mobilizing an incredible amount of military means. We have with Ukraine the most comprehensive association agreement that with any other nation in the world. It's a strong partner for us. We have invested in Ukraine a lot of money since the Crimea was grasped by the Russians. So it's normal that we felt concerned, because it's not just a bilateral matter. It's not just an association between Europe and Ukraine. It's affecting international law and human rights at large. And we were very clear, warning Putin, if you invade Ukraine, you will have to face immediately the toughest package of sanctions that you have ever had to face. We said that, and we did that, because we said that. It has nothing to do with the speed of the enlargement process with other members, with other states. But it has to do with the general political situation in Europe. And certainly, it increases the awareness of the importance of speeding up a process which really has been stalled in the last years for circumstances that has not a lot to do with the preparation of the candidate countries, and it increases our willingness to solve them, the natural consequences of the changes in the environment. And that's what I said. We will have to continue supporting Ukraine. Ukraine has presented a demand to be considered a candidate country, as others, Moldavia, or Georgia. These demands will take their pace, their time, their procedures, but there are other countries who have been waiting for long, who have been fulfilling all its commitments, all the requirements, and now it's time, I hope, and when there is a will, there is a way, that these events will catalyze a quick answer. From the point of view of the financial assistance, I take good note of the analysis and considerations of the Prime Minister. During the pandemic, we supported, but at the beginning we were slow. If we have to imagine a plan to face, from an economic perspective, the economic consequences of the war, certainly it has to integrate the Balkans. But I don't believe that to imagine an economic plan to give an answer to such a challenge is something that can be done overnight. The leaders discussed about it on the meeting in Versailles. They will continue discussing, and we are opening our financial and economic capacity to respond to a crisis which, once again, is not a matter of Albania alone, it's not a matter of Brussels, it's a matter of the strong disruption that the war has created in the world economic circuits, economically and financially. And this requires an answer based on the capacity of our central bankers, our investment bankers, and financial capacities of the member states.
Ermal Qori, Report Televizion. Fillimisht një pyetje për
Shorty, Report TV. A question for you, Prime Minister, first. We've been preparing for time for this wedding, but the bride is not showing up. In the Albanian tradition, when a bride is not allowed to come, the wedding is cancelled indefinitely. Are we going to wait in this direction, or are we going to change approach? And a question for Mr. Borrell. While consecutive promises on Albania's integration are coming from the European Union, we're seeing nothing concrete. And in these times of war, where the risks are heightened for Western Balkans, do you think that there may be an intervention or interference from another authoritarian regime in the Balkans? For example, the direct spillover effect of Russia into Serbia, and let's not forget the conflict between Serbia and Kosovo.
By the interference and influence of Russia and the Western Balkans, which is nothing new. Nothing new. But Russian disinformation, which is the word that we use today to talk about propaganda and systematic lies, it's increasing. We know that and we perceive that. The explanation of the war saying that it's a way of defending the Russian people threatened by the genocide of a Nazi criminal, which is how President Zelensky is being depicted, has been very much widespread using powerful tools that, by the way, you have had to prohibit it in the European Union. We have to face this disinformation because Putin wants not only to conquer the space, but the spirits of the people, the mind of the people, which is a good way of having influence. So yes, we will have to face Russian influence in the Balkans, wherever it takes place. In some countries more than in others. We are very much aware that the Balkans will be a battlefield for ideas, a battlefield for the prospects, a battlefield for the path that the Balkan countries will follow in the future. And this certainly reinvigorates a process that has been depending on questions that in front of a war, in front of the human tragedy that we are facing, in front of the suffering of the millions of people, appears as not being so much important.
Nuk e di këtë traditën
Albanian tradition that you cancel the wedding because the people of the bride do not allow the bride to come. The wedding actually in the Albanian tradition happens upon the agreement of the bride and bridegrooms. People wedded themselves. But if I actually took what you said for granted, there is no people of the bride to cancel the wedding because we are heavily in love with Europe. Such strength of love makes us ready to be wedded when Europe says, I'm ready, and shall not only suffice by saying we love you so much, but we don't have time to talk. We are talking about accession negotiations, that is, negotiations to get wedded. We have received, and I'm convinced that we'll continue to receive, the declarations of love, and we deserve them because we are lovable, and I'm talking about Albanians and Albania. But preparations, when it comes to the wedding, as we used to do before, we are not going to undertake again, because they do not show up, not only because not because they don't want to marry, but they don't have time to get married. When they find the time to get married, we are ready, but we are not going to have this fireworks and the music and this great celebration. It's going to be a marriage that has been consumed before the marriage itself happens. When it comes to what was most importantly connected to the Russian propaganda, we also discussed another issue that has to do with the frequent mention of Albania by Moscow authorities as a problematic presence in this conflict. Additionally, the ensuing accusations that Albania is supplying Ukraine with mercenaries, together with Kosovo, is an ungrounded accusation, first and foremost. It's not true. But it is also concerning. However, we will follow this matter closely as well. At the same time, I wish to thank once again the High Representative of the European Union for his visit and for the readiness expressed that if, and I hope that if things will continue as they are going on for 1 or 2 months, I hope that the European Union will do something to support the countries, to support the people, and if they are going to do that, for sure they will have to include the Western Balkans as part of this plan. The exponential increase of the energy price, and by the way, in Spain it is a liberalized market where the government is unable to intervene. Hence, the energy bill is that high. Or on the other hand, when it comes to the increase of prices of all commodities and items, in particular all the basic food items, is not a result of the position we've been taking or of the standing of the European Union. It is a consequence of the war. There are other countries that have not taken this position, but yet again they are paying the same price. Economy is interconnected nowadays, and the disruption of the economic chains brings this turbulence, which I am convinced the European Union has got the capacities to overcome, but it will take a bit of a time. They have the power to do so, and we want to be part of this opportunity, as we do not have such power, such capacity in the Western Balkans. But the European Union does have it, they will be able to overcome this situation. And maybe we didn't talk about this because we met today and Mr. Borrell mentioned this. Before I said, and this is something you have heard me saying often, Mr. Borrell mentioned an expression that is very, very important to not forget. The increase in prices is a weapon Russia wants to wage against us. By us, I mean our countries, to have the public opinion actually go against the government so that the governments concede when it comes to the pressure exercised against Russia, not for the sake of Ukraine per se, but for the sake of safeguarding the future of all the nations following Ukraine and to avoid a third world war as a matter of fact. This weapon that firing, we must neutralize with a lot of patience, with a lot of determination, and with the clarity that this is not a war that has got nothing to do with us. It has all to do with us, as it is a war to defend what, as Albanians, we got to win 31, 32 years ago, and so that we do not go back to that time. It is at the same time a war to prevent Russia's power from extending further, from coming here or even elsewhere. I strongly believe that the European Union has got all the capacities to neutralize such weapon, and it shall do so. I am certain of it because it has got all the resources. And this is why it's important that the Western Balkans be part of all this. Beyond joking or beyond everything when it comes to the formal accession and to the opening of the benchmarks of the chapters and the steps, that is the least significant part today vis-à-vis all the rest that clearly shows that we are part of the same family, of the same community, being aligned in the same front, and what happens today reinforces this connection. It reinforces the conviction of the member countries of the values Albania embodies as a humble reality, size-wise, but a reality that is quantitatively clear vis-à-vis this community of values. And it further strengthens our conviction that this is the right choice, that we belong with this community and we will stand by that. They will be forced to marry us in the end. They've got nothing else to do. It's just an issue of time. They can't avoid such marriage. But we must resist with all the strength of passion and love that we will show by our patience. Thank you very much.
Faleminderit me qenë se
Let's not complicate it. There were only two questions, so